What's your view of what's next? You've successfully implemented CCH Integrator in Australia and New Zealand. You've got that process now well and truly bedded in. You've got responsibility across the rest of the region. What's your views on next steps for you, and then what's your broader vision as to where you want to try and take this?
Okay, looking at it in two parts, I guess. For myself personally, I would like to see a regional approach now and have a whole-in approach from a global integrator approach in our region, and adapt that as our provisioning tool, also a reporting tool. And I think with the growth in Asia at the moment, the way it's moving, the complexities that we're seeing through some of the tax, through some of the countries, everyone wants their piece of pie at the moment.
Yep.
So it's a good opportunity to have that as probably the next project.
Yep.
And certainly focusing on looking at what the gap-to-gap differences that you have.
Yeah.
Some countries, they're getting wider, unlike in Australia and New Zealand where it is narrow now with the US.
Yep.
But the biggest approach there too would be that, if the US ever move into the IFRS convergence, that they've been talking about for the last 10 years,
yep.
I think that will change the nature as well, from a reporting point of view. And definitely I've worked on a project where that's happened before,
yep.
and the complexities revolving around that from a tax
yep.
provisioning point of view
yep.
is huge.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. So that's one element that I would definitely be looking at in terms of the next step, and would ideally then try to extrapolate that out, globally
yep.
from that, the learnings and also the processes and everything else that comes out of it.
Sure.
Now, in terms of the second part, the future, and from what I see in terms of the tax function, it to me would probably revolve around now looking at financial accounting packages that are intertwined
yep.
with, say, a TI or a GI,
yep.
so that your accountants that are working in there in terms of the financial reporting could actually have a basis
yep.
that works together on a platform with, say, TI or GI. That would ideally work, and then if you could actually then have outside of that your payroll tax software feed in, your FBT feed in,
yep.
A bit like a Google sort of thing when you look at Drive and all those other products the Google has,
yep.
have something like that from a tax point of view and financial accounting,
yep.
even GST, VAT as well, all those sort of products that you have would be great. Even royalties coming in, withholding taxes.
Yep.
As a global organisation, trying to manage that and find out where that is at is very onerous.
So you're probably familiar with our strategy with Integrator, which is to build out the CCH Integrator platform so it can be used for different forms of domestic compliance and other forms of manual data collection requirements or reconciliations or calculations that you need to do. It sounds like our strategy is in line with your vision of where you'd like to go. Corporate statutory accounts, local tax filings, where are they kind of sitting on your list of priorities? And thinking across the region.
Yeah, they are actually high up there, and in particular trying to understand what actually happens at that local level.
Yep.
And when you're dealing with multi-currencies as well, and trying to see exactly what the change is, when the changes occurred, from a timing element as well, gap to gap. You hear a lot of people that come back and say, under local rules, this is what we do, but then you don't see it under US GAAP rules. So you try and figure out, where it's gone wrong.
Yep.
So it's having that control, and you lose that control when you're just looking over the top.
Yep.
But I think when you're part of that process, you can gain more insight, but then you could also advise as well. And that is where I think, the big driver is that a lot of tax managers don't see. Is actually advising on your internal processes and looking at it. The best way to give advice, I always say in any tax function, is understand what the process is internally, and then work around that.
Yep.
And that's always going to be the case.
Yep. Yep.
And looking at your tax accounting as your first starting point will get you back to where you need to be for your tax return.